Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. For the longest time, well, actually since Trump got back into office, we've had these tethers and foreign flags and others telling us that ICE is going to be coming and starting to round up foundational black Americans, that we are under threat like all of these immigrants just because their bad actions have caught up with them. There's been a whole lot of that going on for the last 8 months or so. Well, how's it going then? I posted for you the story of Ian Andre Roberts, a Guyanese illegal alien in Iowa who has made nationwide headlines now, because this guy was in the country illegally for 25 years and he wasn't even in hiding. He came to the U.S. on a student visa back in 1999 and just decided he wasn't going to leave. During that time, he had no problem getting jobs. In fact, he even got a doctorate too, allegedly, and this enabled him to become the superintendent of schools in Des Moines, Iowa. And before that, he had been a school superintendent in both Pennsylvania and Missouri, and before that he was a teacher in Baltimore and even a principal there. In 2024, a judge finally issued an order of removal after a quarter century, but he didn't obey that either. We know why he didn't leave. Tethers are cowards and fleeing is what they do, but why did these white people he was working for just keep giving him job after job after job? Why did they also ignore the law? Baltimore, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Iowa, especially Iowa. That's a white supremacist sewer. The state is a cesspool of white nationalists. These places are racist as the day is long, and yet they were only too happy to give this guy high-ranking governmental positions in their educational system. They knew that he was in the country illegally no matter what they may try to claim. He had no legal status, he had no work authorization, and there was a judge's order demanding that he be removed from the country, but they just claimed that they didn't know anything about it. But now that this story has exploded into national news, you're probably wondering, are those good white folks out there in Iowa going to continue to stand by him? Well, here's your answer.
It took less than 5 minutes for the Des Moines Public School Board to vote to put Dr. Roberts on administrative leave. However, it'll likely take a lot longer to figure out how we got here in the first place.
This morning, the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners announced that Des Moines Public Schools Superintendent, who was detained by ICE on Friday, is no longer licensed to be a school administrator in the state. The letter addressed to Dr. Ian Roberts says that the license issued to the board is no longer valid and his authority to serve as superintendent is revoked. Dr. Roberts has until October 28th to appeal the decision.
Des Moines Public School Board Chair Jackie Norris made one thing clear during a special meeting on Saturday. Norris says the company that conducted Roberts' pre-hire background check did not raise any red flags.
The search firm used a company called Baker Eubanks to conduct the background check, which found nothing related to citizenship or immigration matters related to Dr. Roberts.
The district says it plans to fully cooperate with law enforcement throughout the course of the investigation, and that their number one priority has been and will continue to be the well-being of their students. In Des Moines, Abigail Curtin, KCCI 8 News, Iowa's news leader.
Yeah, they went ahead and stripped him of his education license in record time. They put him on unpaid leave. They couldn't wait to throw him overboard. You got this one white woman in particular, this Norris woman, who's trying to basically give some lip service to the idea of covering for him, but the only thing she's covering for is her own behind. That's why they're naming names. They're telling their white neighbors that they're not responsible for hiring this guy. They're pointing fingers in all directions except for at themselves. They're saying that they didn't know about his criminal record or that he was an illegal alien status and it was overlooked by whoever the staffing company was who did the background check. It's garbage, of course. But it goes to show there's no honor among thieves. They're just splaining like there's no tomorrow. New information we weren't aware of. We're going to continue to provide top education no matter what, whatever. And that woman, Jackie Norris, she's also known for one other thing. She was the chief of staff for Michelle Obama back in 2009. Believe it or not, it's true. Yeah, the First Lady of the U.S., who has no White House duties other than to stand beside her husband for the photo ops, and yet she has a chief of staff for what I don't know. Our tax dollars at work. So that's why this Jackie Norris woman is talking her white liberal crap, but her fellow white Iowans are saying she needs to go. Before it's all over, she could very well find herself the fall guy for all this. That's why she's speaking with a forked tongue. Now, this guy claimed that he was a U.S. citizen, and apparently nobody actually bothered to confirm that. See, this is what happens when you got a tether. They pretend to be one of us, and as long as they don't speak with too thick an accent, these people from the dominant society will gladly overlook all of their lack of documentation. And you probably didn't know it, but he was also registered to vote, even though he should never have been.
I also used his name to look him up on the Maryland Board of Elections website and found that in 2017, he was registered to vote. Of course, only people who are U.S. citizens are allowed to vote in U.S. elections. This is a story we will continue to follow and try to provide answers as we work to gather more information.
And of course, there is the issue of his criminal record.
Today, I dug through Iowa courts and public records and found that Dr. Roberts had received 2 speeding tickets, one in 2023 and another in 2024. Both of these came after Dr. Roberts started as DMPS superintendent.
And he was ordered to be deported in May 2024 following a weapons possession charge.
Federal agents say Robert tried to speed away after they were attempting to take him into custody back on Friday. They say he ditched his district-owned car near a wooded area. They did eventually arrest him, and inside his car, DHS found a loaded gun, a knife, and $3,000 cash, they tell us.
So, Mr. Teacher of the Year was caught with a gun, a knife, and thousands of dollars in loose cash. Sounds like an episode of The Wire. I guess that's why he was a teacher in Baltimore. Now, I'm going to need the Guyanese people to go ahead and claim this guy, because up until now he was a proud Guyanese American, and his alleged doctorate degree and his multiple school superintendent positions were all accomplishments for Guyanese Americans because, immigrants work harder, are more diligent, etc., etc. They come from a culture that values education, just not at home. Okay, he's not going to suddenly stop being Guyanese now. He's not going to be allowed to suddenly just be black. No, he is Guyanese. And what he's done accrues to that as well. No lumping him in with anyone else. It needs to be remembered that one of the most popular talking points among the tethers is that, those black Americans, they're just such criminals. They're always breaking the law. They weren't taught to respect the law like good immigrants are. Yeah, well, here you got a guy who has a doctorate, allegedly, and allegedly went back to Guyana so that he could compete in the Olympics for Guyana, because that country did so much for him, don't you know?
After he entered the U.S. in 1999, he went back to Guyana and participated in the Olympics. In the track and field, bizarre stuff here.
And yet this guy, he happens to have a criminal record going back years. And the guy also had guns, even though he happened to be in a school vehicle. This is law-abiding. And please be sure to tell everyone how he's so hardworking. Surely that's going to impress these white authorities who are trying to kick him out of the country. But please don't be silly and let the white media con you with any claims that there's protests on this guy's behalf. 2 potheads with a megaphone do not constitute a protest. We are the moral conscience of this country. If we're not out there stomping for this guy, then it doesn't matter. See, when the white media is claiming that there's protest for this guy, that's trick language, weasel words, is meant to deceive people into thinking that we are the ones out there who are objecting to his removal. Well, let me go on the record in saying we're neutral on this. Everyone's going to have to hold their own. He's Guyanese, he needs to ask his people to ride for him. But given the lack of presence by Guyanese Americans, I think it's safe to say that they're doing the same thing he was doing for 25 years, hanging back, way back. Now, the central question out of all this is, how could this have happened? In order to become a teacher, much less a principal or school superintendent, you have to undergo a number of background checks, especially as you rise through the ranks. You got to do it over and over again.
They also noted that Roberts had passed their own third-party background check, as well as an FBI background check conducted by the Iowa Department of Education.
And this guy in at least 3 different states was able to go from one institution to the next, to the next, to the next, and was never stopped even once. That shows you the system isn't broken. It's operating exactly the way that somebody wants it to. This is the purest evidence that there's been a program at work the entire time. This was their end run around what we were supposed to get following the civil rights movement. White power brought in a bunch of disloyal and duplicitous tethers and cherry-picked them to leapfrog over us, and this is how they've been operating. And the tethers have been getting themselves checked on more than one front. Brother Tariq talked the other day about a Jamaican tether who got herself canned from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, a woman who spent years talking mad trash about black men in specific, just a nonstop torrent of hate and vitriol. Her white bosses, of course, had no problem with that, because that assured them that her top priority was attacking us. And this is who they put in the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, right alongside another tether, Kristen Clark. But then she got a little bit too big for her plate of butter biscuits, and she decided she was going to talk trash about Charlie Kirk, and that's when Zaddy decided it was time for her to go. They went ahead and mounted up on her and gave her the boot. She thought that trashing black men ingratiated her with the white power structure, and they showed her that they only permitted her to talk so long as it was not about her superiors. It also showed that her Zaddy worship was clearly insincere. It was just a lie. Otherwise, why would she be turning on Charlie Kirk like that? She should have been saying, well, not all Zaddies is like him, you know, but that's not what she was saying. The only thing genuine about her was her hatred for black men. And these will be the people who tell us that they came to the U.S. with no money and immediately got into some government or corporate position because, yeah, white power picked them to be a crash dummy. And nobody keeps a crash dummy around. You use it once, then you throw it out. And the tethers know it. Lying about us is their ticket to ride, and they're fully aware of it. That's why the black media made sure to tell you about Caroline Wanga, the tether from Essence, who also admitted that her family had been collaborators in the East African slave trade. And how did her father rationalize their generational treason? She just brushed it off and said, we did what we had to survive. That's a lie, because the Arabs weren't trying to take over Kenya, and even if they were, they wouldn't be able to pull it off. There is nowhere south of the Sudan where Arabs call any shots or are the majority population. So that's a lie. It's about survival. The people who collaborated with the slave trade, they did it because for some people, backstabbing is just how they are. And guess what? When it comes to tethers and how they lie about us and trash us so they can ingratiate themselves with these white supremacists, they attack us and assure white power that they're on the team, just so they can suck up for a job. Don't you know they use the same pathetic rationalization as Caroline Wanga did? Attacking the very black people who made it possible for them to be here, who fought and bled and died for the rights and opportunities that they were just allowed to walk in and enjoy without having done anything to earn them. The tethers know full well that they didn't get those opportunities because of any merit on their part, and it damn sure wasn't because of any hard work. They recognized from the very beginning that their job was to undermine us, to be a political counterlever to our influence and the threat that we posed with our demands, and to be a placeholder meant to prevent us from being in positions of influence to bring about change. They knew and have always known that they were living a lie. Theirs was the lowest and basest of betrayals, but then again, it's no different than what they did in their home countries. How do these tethers live with themselves? The same way Caroline Wanga and her family do. They left the place where they committed their treason and came over here because the thing to remember about traitors is that traitors never build. All they know how to do is to destroy. When you have no conscience, you don't consider anything you do to be a sin. So now the tethers are getting put on notice. White power was content to pretend that it liked them, but they always knew what they were going to do about them when the time came, and the time always comes. White power absolutely loves a cruel prank, especially one that takes a long time to pay off, and this one has been decades in the making. And when it comes to cruel pranks, the main one that white power loves is when they have some mark, some rube, some loser who they let think that they have friends. Oh, they pat them on the back, give them some insincere praise, make them really think that they're surrounded by buddies and that everybody likes them. And then, when the time comes, you go ahead and do something that absolutely humiliates them, that destroys them. And if the person goes ahead and offs themselves afterwards, that makes it even better. There's a reason why it is the white power in particular celebrates those kind of narratives. The humiliation ritual. Take somebody and make them think that you're their friend, only so you can turn around and absolutely humiliate them to death. But when people choose to dance with the devil, this is what you get. And tethers are a large part of the reason that whenever we've brought lawsuits and such, the DOJ in particular can't wait to tell black people that there's nothing they can do about it, that we have no grounds for a suit, that the law doesn't support what we're demanding. They always do that mess, because there are people like this in those positions who white power will put in front of the cameras to repeat their lies. These tethers actually thought that they had bought white supremacy's loyalty. And the tethers shouldn't come looking for sympathy. They're not sorry that they attacked us. They never are. They're not sorry for how they spent decades and made an entire culture out of being as anti-black as the worst white supremacist. They certainly weren't sorry for how they abandoned their homeland and in most cases collaborated with the colonizers against their own people. And they're not sorry that they came to the country that we built and did the same dirt here. The only thing they're sorry about is that their backstabbing and scheming didn't work. That's it. Full stop. And you notice that none of these immigrants can ever band together amongst themselves. Sure, you'll have a few of them able to do it for a short-term goal here and there at the personal level, but even then, it's always exploitative. They're always exploiting someone, trying to take advantage of somebody. This is why any sort of cross-immigrant solidarity could never happen. They didn't come from a culture that practiced unity. We do. They don't. So when they face a problem like this, it becomes every immigrant for themselves, just like they did back in the home country. And as for Ian Roberts, maybe he'll do a crowdfunding for his legal defense, though from the sound of things, the courtroom verdict is already in. All right, that's how the Great ICE Roundup of 2025 is going. No FBAs have been put in those detention centers, by the way. See, that's something that Ian Roberts didn't understand. Something that these tethers will never get. He knew that the feds were looking for him since at least 2020, and they had that order of removal filed in 2024. But keep in mind, what he thought to himself was that he was home free. After all, they hadn't come looking for him yet. He's supposed to be a teacher. And I've seen some suspected tethers from Baltimore bigging him up. Well, I've got a radical idea. If this guy is really so great at sparking the minds of the young, then he needs to go back to Guyana. He needs to be taking his superior work ethic and his superior education and finally putting it to use for his own people. Standing instead of fleeing, building instead of running. Yeah, that's something that a great teacher like him could stand to learn. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Calvin MacArthur, Chevalier Foster, Jacques Hargett, Regina Nixon, and Tyrone Leake. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.